Tick tock, tick tock. Okay, we're live. Woohoo. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Appreciate you being here. Angie Hall is here to join us over to my right, as I'm sure you're noticing. Yeah, so why don't we just do a quick round of share your name and just something good from your life lately. Angie, you willing to start us off and then just pick somebody?
Sure. Put the guest on spot, huh? Yeah. I'm Angie Hall. I teach at Athens Middle School, and something good in my life right now. Is that what you said, John? The sun is shining. There we go.
Make it up if you have to, but yeah.
Nah, I'm pretty happy today. It's a good day.
Good. You want to just pick somebody?
How about Lacey? I haven't seen my friend in a while.
Yes, it's been a second. Lacey. I will say, obviously the weather is very nice, and so I'm looking forward to a walk with Pup. It also would have been my grandpa's 101st birthday today, so a little bit sad that I'm not in Cincinnati because they tend to go try to do something. Sounds like they're going to grab some graders together, but I'll be celebrating my own way here. So,
yeah.
Yes. So,
Who's next, Lacey?
Let's go with Brandon.
There's something in the chat. You might want to pull that out.
Yeah.
Somebody having fun. But yeah, I'm Brandon Thompson, and something good in my life is I saw the new Godzilla movie, and it was everything I wanted it to be, almost. So that's bringing me joy. And then, yeah, I'm gonna watch it again. So, and I will pass it to Laura.
Hey all, Laura Black. Coach Hall, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Husband, good to see you.
Yeah. Let's see. Something good in my life. My 16-year-old was again selected for a scholarship to study abroad in Germany next year. And so we're hoping that this year it actually gets to happen rather than a virtual program. So it's good stuff. And I will pass it to Micah.
Good afternoon, Micah McCary, he, him, his, and I am really gonna go with the weather. I know it's been said already, but I think it bears repeating because spring has been long awaited.
Who's next, Micah?
Having trouble seeing everyone right now, so I'm not sure.
How about Marlene?
Marlene, yeah.
Sure. I'm Marlene, as everyone said, and I'm going to go with the weather because I've been out here like even really early when I had to wear a sweater to be out here. I was out here because it is just beautiful and the sunshine just makes me happy. So welcome.
Good.
And Raimi?
Okay. The best thing in my life the last few days is I found time to start going through things and dumping papers from the mid-1960s that I no longer really need, plus a lot of other stuff that we no longer need. So I've got 2 big boxes of recycling and some for shredding. So, and it's in process still, but it gives me a good feeling to start downsizing a bit.
Nice. Laura, did you go?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so, but I wasn't positive. And I'm John, and lots of good things. One is I did drop off my tax information yesterday to get processed, so it's nice to have that done. Yeah. And I planted some lettuce plants this morning. So, and I don't know who that was or why that happened in the chat, but does anybody want to comment?
It just means this work is that much more important.
Yep.
Anyone's going to take their time and show up. That's how I felt. So.
Oh dear.
Good. Yeah.
Does that go on the record? How does that work for the meeting or something like that? I think it's important. Does that go on the record, or what's, is that, I don't want to repeat it, but I mean, is that, I think it's important when we were
I
reporting
don't-
out, like we were at a meeting and this was said, you know, and people are wondering why we're doing anti-racism work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know in the recording if it records chat or not, but I'll find out about that, and I'll also mention it to Chris Nisley and the mayor, just that happened, so people can be aware in case it happens to other meetings. But you're right, in case we forgot about the existence of white supremacy, there's a reminder. Well, glad everybody's here. This is great. I'll stick the agenda up here real quick. The primary thing we wanted to start with was youth-focused anti-racism events or initiatives. And so as requested, I had invited Angie Hall to join us. And Angie, I said a little bit to you in the text, but we're not terribly far along in the conversation. I think a lot of us were noticing a lot of good things happening for adults in the community. And, you know, there are things you're doing and things we're doing at the high school, but there hasn't really been a youth focus, especially on anti-racism work. And so it was the beginning. They've had that happen 3 times in the last year. Okay, that's good to know. So we're really at the beginning of the conversation. So I just want to open it up to everybody, and maybe Angie, if you want to say anything first about what you're doing and what you'd like to see, and we can go from there.
I'm not sure. I know that Lacey and Brandon are familiar with what I've been trying to do at the middle school. Brandon more so, I think, in my classroom as well. But a couple of things. One is that the Andrew Jackson Davison project kind of fell into my lap last year. So that started work that involved the community and outreach in our Black History Month event last year and our follow-up this year. So for me, I feel like the kids, the youth, it's about them and their experience at school and their educations. But I think Winsome said at our Black History Month event this year, she concluded with, there are leaders and we need to be prepared to follow them. And I'm seeing that with this generation of kids. I have more hope. This is my 30th year teaching, and I have more hope with this generation of young people than I've ever had in my 30 years of teaching. I don't think they're very tolerant of racism, sexism, any of the isms. Now that's not all inclusive, but there's a good, strong group of young leaders coming up. And then in my classroom, I've personally been on a journey because I teach American history to boldly teach. I've always taught, how do I want to say this? I've always taught hard history, but I'm trying to do better at making modern day connections and to help develop the leadership of the young people and to give them a voice and outlet. So I don't just teach the 13th Amendment. I taught the 13th Amendment today, and I'm supposed to teach that it ended slavery. We spent the entire class period talking about the loophole, if you will, and what that looks like. And we looked at numbers of statistics of Black imprisonment compared to white imprisonment and the percentages of the population and et cetera. So we had a really great conversation, a real conversation. So they didn't just learn the history, but they also learned the modern day implications. And I'm trying to be better at that because I think education is our best sword against racism.
Okay, thank you. Well, maybe we should just jump in and have you know, brainstorm ideas. What would we like to perhaps see happen? Nothing is signed in blood yet, but you know, what ideas are there out there that to do something with young people around anti-racism?
Just a thought, and this is what I've been pondering. I hate to dominate a meeting that's not my meeting. I feel like I'm doing that. Stop me if I am, John.
No,
We're
wanting
invited
your
for a
voice, that's
reason.
why you're here.
Okay. I've really been thinking about this a lot, and I have one class that is online all year this year. And honestly, it's a class I've had my best conversations with. I had to kind of decompress once by texting Brandon as soon as it was over because the kids asked questions that quite frankly made me feel uncomfortable. But I'm glad that they asked him, and I'm glad I was uncomfortable. And okay, so I have found that by having difficult conversations and making myself vulnerable as their mentor, their teacher, that they then feel safe to be honest with me. In the last 2 weeks, I've had a Chinese American student write an essay, not for a class assignment. She felt compelled to write an essay. She called it "In My Skin," about the experience of being a Chinese American in our school system and in her life in society and the community. I had an assignment about Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and how literature and telling the truth about that can change the world. And so one young man, instead of answering the assignment questions, instead wrote to me about his journey, about figuring out his gender and his sexuality and talking about fluidity. And it was brilliantly and intelligently written, but he felt like he instead wanted to scrap my questions and write his own influential piece. So I have found that I'm getting a lot more out of my students. This is online. People I've never met in person. I'm getting a lot more out of my students by making myself vulnerable and having difficult conversations. But I don't know what that looks like and how you do that. It's just kind of happened for me recently. But I think that's what our young people need.
Mhm.
There, I'll pass it.
Yeah.
I think
we've-
that's fantastic, and it resonates for me with the kinds of conversations we're having at the high school with the kids involved in the kind of anti-racism class, and honestly, it's the approach that I take to my university students, and I see, the times when I'm like more open and more kind of vulnerable and more listening mode. It's really opens things up for them. So I think that's fantastic that you're doing that with the middle school.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, it makes me, part of the thing to wonder about if we do some kind of an event for young people is it, where is the focus on simply giving them space to have conversations? And where is the focus on giving them some kind of perspective or tool or education that might also help them? And where's the balance, or is there one? We certainly don't want to lose the piece of them having lots of space to just talk to each other about what they want to talk about, but maybe there's room for some of the other thing too.
It could also be a little bit tiered isn't quite the right word for what I'm thinking about, but like kind of a mentoring process where some of like the high schoolers are available to work with middle school kids and so on, right? So that we are helping kind of create a framework where students can have different roles depending on what their kind of experience and needs are.
Yeah.
There is a population of students too. I think we tend to think about the students who want to have these conversations and to understand racism and anti-racism better. But there's a group of students in our community too who are being raised by racist parents. And so when I taught, I just finished teaching the Civil War, so I taught the history of the Confederate flag and its symbolism. And I know I watched a couple of students really understand that perhaps their parents fly and wear the attire and the belt buckles, etc. But I have a feeling, because I saw them listening to me in class, that they won't wear it. So I had a student last year when Ada would came to speak to a group of students. I only had so many seats available. So I had students write me a letter telling me why they wanted to hear Ada speak. And one girl said, my grandpa belongs to the KKK, and everything that you tell me is the opposite of what he has told me. And so I want to hear a Black person speak. That girl went. And so I think part of this too is not just focusing on our students being raised by academics and intellectuals, but also figuring out a way to expose students who are being raised by racist parents and in racist households. To help them see a different world than the one that has raised them.
Yeah. Micah, what are you thinking?
There's so much great stuff here. I appreciate the chance to hear about all these amazing learning experiences that are unfolding, and I love the idea of empowering folks to share their stories, whether it's through poetry or through essays. It's so nice when teachers can create that flexibility. So those are just some preliminary thoughts. Love to see and hear more about that. And it's especially powerful to think about the impact. I would love to hear people's stories of like when they did have that conversation with grandpa at Thanksgiving. And I wonder though, the vulnerability piece is definitely key there. And I recognize that there's always pushback when, when you have some people who come home feeling like there was a great lesson and discussion around the Confederate flag, you also have some people who are going to be upset that there was that discussion unfolding in the class. And I think it'll be just interesting to think about what we can anticipate and what we can stand, firm in our convictions on. So just preliminary thoughts there.
Yeah. Marlene, what you thinking?
Oh, I was thinking about last time we mentioned a Youth Anti-Racist Leadership Institute, right? And so I was thinking, the things that you're saying, Angie, really would work if we could think of ways to set that up so that we had some folks obviously sharing information. We know that part of being anti-racist is learning and continuing to learn. And so what could we put that was age appropriate, right, for various groups, but then having follow-up sessions. And as Micah was saying, I was thinking about, our poet in the city doing some sessions with some of the students, right, to create poetry, maybe based on what that means. Maybe you would be willing to come in and do some sessions on, writing a short essay that kind of outlines your experiences. And we could do some things that are really geared towards them, but then also thinking about, maybe an arts, professor or the printmaking folks at OU could come in and do some things as they're doing with community engagement, just to create a thing that you walk away with. So it's not just you learned, it's not just you processed with others and were hands-on, but it's also you walk away with something that reminds you of that commitment that you made.
Great, thank you. Lacey, what you thinking?
I was just kind of thinking about how with our class, I feel like a lot of the students, love the class in general, but particularly when we do the longer retreats, a lot of them say they get, a significant amount of stuff out of that being longer and maybe a little bit less specifically, this is what we're focusing on. So I feel like having some sort of longer event that allows them to process these things and think about things from different perspectives will definitely be something that they're interested in. Like Angie said, I'm not necessarily sure, similar to, us trying to get more male identified students in our classes. I'm not necessarily sure how to get people who, might have parents were they to know that they were part of this would not allow them to go, for instance. So trying to reach out to the people that aren't already kind of on board and kind of get it. And I'm seeing that might also be a difficult thing to do too, but definitely want to be involved with this, would love to work with Angie. I said we're already overdue for another project, so.
Yeah, great. Brandon, any thoughts? Brandon never has any thoughts, so we can skip him probably.
So I'm trying to think of like the best way to get those people that Lacey just meant, because that's where my mind always goes to. Because there's no doubt we would have people who'd be interested in it, but like I always see like Athens City Schools as like these two parallel groups, and there's people who want to be part of this and the people don't, and there's no interaction and there's no space with the teachers, and then the stuff continues. Like I appreciate what you said, Angie. Like, these students seem like they're ready to take on the world. That's what they told my group of students, and nothing changed in 20 years. And so I worry about that, where we'll have those people who are doing stuff, but then the majority won't have the exposure. And I just wonder how we expand that, because I do think something around like the oppression of boys would be something as well, folded into that anti-racism, because I know that is a huge thing at any school, just the culture of boys and stuff like that. And that might be something where, maybe I always just use the term Trojan horse, but we start with something and then it allows that. But then like when I was in school, we had the peer mediation group. I don't know if that still exists or whatever, but it was basically what we're creating right here, where, people had arguments, like they had facilitators, like I was a facilitator, we would meet and then like they would just sit down, and I was a mediator, but I see something like that being like built up kind of with this, where it could have these isms that we're working on. But I just worry about creating these things and then thinking that people are going to flock to them, and there's not that hook that brings a lot. Like Lacey said, there's going to be parents who don't want their students to go at all, but there's also going to be plenty of parents that have no feeling one way or another, and there's not going to be a push, and so it's an extra thing to go to. Like, how do we all know the importance of it, a lot of the students do not, and how do we get over that? That's where my mind goes. But with that said, I think this is amazing. Like, this is a space where the students are learning, but also then hopefully informing our teachers, because I know that's been a thing that's been going on, where the students don't feel comfortable for whatever reason sharing things with the teachers, and then some teachers not feeling, I think, comfortable with a certain topic. And if we can open that kind of conversation, it could be, upperclassmen teaching younger people, like Laura said, but also conversations with teachers. You get a better sense of who they are, and then that's the person I want to talk to about this. And different teachers can also have different areas that they're helping with, not just anti-racism, but if it's sexism, if it's gender issues, stuff like that. But I just still think about that, like, 14-year-old white kid, white boy, why am I going to go to this? This isn't for me. And they're the one who needs it the most, and they would benefit from it. So how do we make it, show them that they would benefit from it? I think that's the thing that's on my mind. And no, I don't have any thoughts ever, so.
Yeah. Ramy, what you thinking? Oh, go ahead, Lacey, and then Ramy can jump in.
Well, I was just wondering too, I don't know if this would be an official through the Athens High School and or middle school somehow, but I'm always thinking about, like, are there ways to incentivize this? Because obviously we just want people to do it because they want to, but also we know some people need that extra boost. Is there a way to make it sort of like the Career and Leadership Development Center, where it's kind of like a certificate program, and like each year they participate in X amount of things, and then at the end of it they get some sort of, I don't know what has to officially happen to make it a certificate, but some sort of like thing that they're like actively involved in each year of school, or for X amount of years of school, they take 1 to 2 classes, retreats, whatever, and then they get to at the end say that they got the certificate or something.
Yeah, great. Ramy, what you thinking about?
Well, I wish I had some solutions for these kinds of problems, because they appear to be intractable, quite frankly. And I appreciate what Angie has said a great deal, because in the 5 decades that I was involved in academics, I didn't interact that much with these specific kinds of problems in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. I think it's different at the college level for that reason, that you don't necessarily connect with which parents are racist, which ones are not, et cetera, in the classroom, even in the context of the same kinds of discussions. So for me, it's a new experience, but I'm not surprised by it, unfortunately. I do think that we have to be very careful thinking that we're going to actually change their lives in the long term, especially those that are already part of a racist society. I think back to my own youth, growing up in Montana, in a society that was anti-Native American, for example. and the language that was used with respect to that group, because they were the ones in the neighborhood, if you will, as opposed to African Americans. And how you outgrow that and move beyond it is not always an easy task. And so I think we have to be patient to some degree, at least, in trying to move students from the background that they are used to and appears to be normal to them with respect to a set of values, to a new set of values that is actually contradictory to what they've come up with, and how they then navigate that with parents and with grandparents who remain within their own mindset, if you will, their own set of values, and are impervious to change. So it's a difficult kind of problem, but finding more ways to interact with young people inside the classroom and outside the classroom is, I think, the way to have an impact. I know when I was directing the McNair Scholars Program, as I talked with the students that were part of that program, things that happened in their high school made them realize that a college education was the way to move forward, because they didn't see it in their own life. They didn't see it around them in their own social circle. So it's very important to try to at least continue the effort to expand their horizons with regard to what is possible.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
I'd
ahead,
like
Angie.
to, oh, sorry.
No, that's actually, I was about to say, Angie? Oh, and Laura needs to go.
I do. I'm really
Yeah.
sorry to miss the rest of this conversation. I have to
It was nice to
do a
see you
professional
again.
thing. Yeah,
It's just the
absolutely.
beginning, I believe, so.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, all.
I would like to add to what Ramey said, that I have found that Ty Carr, a good friend of mine, calls this calling people in instead of calling people out. I think that is incredibly important with kids. And so I had a student a few years ago, we were reading a story about Satchel Paige and an assignment on Satchel Paige, and he blurted out in class, "Why do we have to read a story about a dumb," and said the N-word right there in class. And I took him into the hallway. We had a conversation, and I had several conversations. You can imagine this young man and his family that year. And finally he started to say something one day and stopped himself. And I said, "Richard, do you have something to say?" And he goes, "Nope, because I don't want to hear one of your dumb stories again." But I really think that me being persistent and having these conversations with this young man finally at least created a filter, perhaps. And I think he did hear what I was trying to say to him all year. But I think, you make me think about what we do at school with situations like that. And perhaps it is, if someone is, if they're caught smoking, there's a program where they have to go to smoking school. I hate to call it that. I don't know what it is, but perhaps there is some kind of special, not make you feel bad, but educate you about racism and why you feel comfortable blurting out the N-word in class, or I don't know, but perhaps there's some kind of program when we do have instances at school. I had a young Black girl, obviously she's young, I teach 8th grade, who just sent me an email before I joined this meeting. She's in my online class, but she was in person, and she emailed me to say that she moved to online because 2 boys had been harassing her in gym class, and I'm the only teacher she feels comfortable telling that to. But that was a month ago, and it took her a month to gather the courage. So now what do we do with those 2 boys? I've since passed all of this on and forwarded the emails to my principal, but those 2 boys need called in, if you will. So I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah. And a couple of things I'm thinking about, and one is that I want us to be careful about drawing a line and saying the racists are over here on one side and all the rest of us are cool over here on the other side. That we've all got learn, you know, and all of us, yes, and especially all of us who are white, have a lot of learning and growth to do and courage to find. So, you know, the phrase people use is preaching to the choir, and, you know, choirs practice all the damn time, you know, that's what we need to be doing, even if think we're more on the aware side rather than the unaware side. And then the other thing is that, you know, how do we make this a place, and do we want to make this a place? Is it fair to make this a place where we want students of color to come and be comfortable and speak out? And I'm thinking we do, but you know, we're talking broadly at this point. So the other thing I'll say is it seems clear we're not talking about, you know, we've started talking about an event, but if we go down this road, we're talking about more than an event, you know, and we already have other pieces of engagement with the school system. And then I guess yet another question, sorry, is are we talking about middle school and high school students? And are we also talking about university students? Or is this what we're talking about doing geared really toward the middle and high school students?
I think it definitely needs to include the middle school students. I specifically remember a switch from 6th to 7th grade. You know, you're put with everybody, and I know it's gonna be a little different with the new school, but that's when you really start your teenager. I really feel like that's when you're showing out. That's when the class clown really becomes that class clown and stuff like that. And I still feel like that's the case. So, you know, and I think it's easier to mold. I remember being much more fearful of my teachers in 7th grade than I was freshman and sophomore year, you know, so you're more likely to not necessarily fear, but just respect, or just, you know, be more molded by them there versus 2 years of, you know, so that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Angie, I also want to be respectful of your time. I know it's your lunch hour, so I don't know if you can
That's
stay
okay.
or
I'm
need to
fine.
go.
I'm
Okay,
absolutely
good.
fine.
So we've got lots of good ideas. How do we want to proceed?
When you're talking age group, I don't know if this helps or not, but next year there will be a high school chapter of the Andrew Jackson Davison Club. Fitz Reed at the high school will be the advisor for that. And the 6th grade will be at the middle school next year. So Jennifer Hinkle is going to work with me at the middle school with the Andrew Jackson Davison Club. Then when the Plains 4 through 6 building opens, which is an interesting age group feeding into middle school, she will begin the intermediate school chapter of the Andrew Jackson Davison Club. So it's growing, and those are the age groups that we're targeting. So if that helps you maybe align with that thought process.
It glitched for a second for me. Did you say Chris Stepp would be the one who would be?
Oh no, Jennifer Hinkle.
Jennifer Hinkle. Okay,
yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
she was in book clubs last summer.
Yeah, she's a brilliant, she just finished her PhD, but in teaching controversial subjects and controversy, and she's really motivated to lead. We share the same philosophy about using history and truth to make our way. So she'll be the advisor for the 4th through 6th grades.
Great. So we may want to pull her into this conversation as well.
Or Fitz Reed at the high school as well.
Yeah.
Are there other, oh, I see your hands up, Micah. Sorry, you've been, oh, good. I didn't know if there are other models that we could model this off of currently at the schools, you know, or is this a brand new thing, you know, that we're putting forth? Because it doesn't seem too difficult as far as like the concept. We're going to bring the students in the space, and it's going to be, you know, bringing people together, you know, so who are the people going to do it, and what are the subjects? But I just didn't know if there's something else that we could model it after, you know, that might be a first step, because it feels very doable bringing people together. But like, I guess nailing down how many people do we want? You know, is it, do we feel good if we have 30 people that show up out of the high school, or is this really like, hey, we want every student to go through this, or half the students to go through this, or a quarter? Because that's where I always struggle with these things. You know, like, it's important to empower the people who really want to be there, but it's really because I, like, when I'm at school at Athens, I have to interact with all those other students that don't give a crap. You know, like that student you're talking about, Angie, that uses the N-word, and I have to watch them. Like, I put in there, like, use the N-word, get pulled in the hall and told why you shouldn't do this, but nothing really happens. And then I just have to kind of, you know, just have to take that, you know. But if there's a discussion about, hey, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that too. That was kind of messed up. Like, maybe we should, like, you know, our students, we've been doing of, you know, putting some information about the N-word and whatnot. But, you know, like, just so they're, because those students talk. Like, I was on the sports teams, and some of my teammates are great, others weren't, but, like, you know, we had to interact, and so we could have those conversations. And how do we just bring those people in is what I'm really interested in, because I don't know, like, there are spaces for, you know, and a lot of times these students do have some support, you know, if they're into, they usually have parents that are supporting them. How do we get those people who are, their parents are too busy? You know, it's not that they don't have racist parents, their parents are just too busy, and so they're just kind of floating and going along with the flow, which is not being racist, but just not being anti-racist Athens City Schools, you know. And that, so I just wonder if there's a program we can just pick, like, hey, this is what they do, and then they hit 40% and they've seen success rate, maybe a different school district or something. I don't know if anybody knows. I just want to throw it out there.
We can ask Tom Gibbs if he knows of other school systems. And, you know, I haven't done a lot of research, but usually when I look into things like, you know, programs for high schoolers or something like that, so much of it is top-down stuff. You know, it's these are the 12 lectures you're going to give to the students, and it's not, you know, it's not conversation-based, discussion-based, but that doesn't mean it's not out there.
On connecting this to conversation we had at last meeting, just in terms of thinking about how groups like our Racial Equity Coalition of Athens can help highlight and clarify where this work is going on, because we're right now talking about students, high schoolers, middle schoolers, and I realize I need a primer on kind of what work is already happening and where, because I recognize our commission cares about this happening everywhere. And so far I've seen us focus on some adult initiatives and some high school initiatives, and now we're talking about middle school. So it just seems like it would make sense to have a more comprehensive understanding of which areas we're trying to hit, and when are we just trying to do something for middle schoolers in the next 6 months, or are we thinking about how our ACRC commission is promoting anti-racism in all areas of our community, or identifying people who are doing that work?
Yeah. So many good ideas.
My worst fear in having a packaged program, for instance, Dr. Gibbs is working on or contemplating, he's not there yet because we can't have in-person professional development, preparing 7 through 12 teachers to teach hard history. I hate even calling it that, but most of the social studies teachers are not, they're not comfortable. They don't do it, they avoid it. And so I know that it's one of his goals for the 7 through 12 social studies department to teach better. I'm just gonna I don't know how to say that. So, but I threw the idea out to him that I really don't want a company coming in, people who don't have boots on the ground, or they, you know, they might be an education professor at Harvard, but they haven't been in the classroom ever, perhaps. So I asked him, when I learned that this was it's actually on the agenda for the Racial Equity Coalition Committee for Education. And I emailed him and I said, please let me organize this. And sorry, Brandon and Lacey, but I already had you in my head. I was gonna, you know, I offered to have it at my cabin and me call in the people who have guided me and mentor me and support me and tell me when I'm wrong, that I trust, just come in and talk to the teachers and inspire them, build their confidence, turn them around and slap them where they need it, you know, give them a dose of reality. Because I think our community, our Black community, needs to say, you know, we have one teacher who's afraid she's going to traumatize Black students if she teaches hard history, if she teaches the real story of the Middle Passage or rape, and she doesn't want to try. And so I talked to a Black friend about that, and she's like, no, our kids know our history, you know, but they need, I think some of my white teaching peers need to hear from our Black parents and our Black community members and feel safe expressing why they're reluctant, or perhaps being called out on their cowardness or what have you. But I just had sent an email to Dr. Gibbs with that thought, that I don't want to package professional development or a package program. We've got to meet our kids where they are. And we have OU student or OU parents, and we have racist parents who have never worked a day in their life, or we're all over the place. We're a unique community, and I think we need a unique program for our community. So I hate packaged professional development or packaged curricula. I just hate it. So there you go.
Fortunately or unfortunately, we may be the best people available.
I think I'm in good hands. I know I am.
And I don't limit that to just us, you know, but others here in Athens that we can draw in as well. This would be an interesting, you know, there in 2 weeks there'll be the next art of hosting thing that will be very much a space for people to bring up projects and then get help and resource and to actually plan. And this would be an interesting thing to bring up there. But part of what Angie's reminding us too is that we can collaborate, you know, with others in the Racial Equity Coalition, for example.
What I really love about that idea, because I do see the limitations of using prepackaged curriculums that weren't necessarily created with your community involved in. There can be something so much more powerful when there's the thought that we created this, and the art of hosting tools do seem like something that would be transferable to different populations. So maybe if that's where the community investment is, we could think of using that, how using that framework with middle schoolers or high schoolers could help us achieve different goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just want to bring attention to you guys talking about the sports teams in the chat. I think that's something that could really do a lot. You know, that's a very definable group of people we could work with, you know, going to the coaches and seeing who's interested in that, you know, because there are a lot of people that just, hey, if you're going to be on this team, you know, we just need you to be part of this meeting or something like that. You know, coaches do that all the time. Like really, but if you need to be here, do this. Hey, you're going to be at, you know, weights, you got to do this. You got to do this thing, you know, and it wouldn't be, I don't think, too hard. You know, we could identify the coaches and stuff, but that might be a place to think about depending on what this structure looks like. So
yeah,
it's a good idea.
I keep thinking we might be talking about more than one thing as well, you know. But yeah, Ron Lucas is somebody, I don't know how involved he is with it now, but you know, he was very involved with the football team for a long time. So he would be somebody who would be sympathetic to what we're trying to do.
And I think, yeah, Fitz Reed is he the track coach, the cross country coach?
He is
Or
he is
was.
one of the track coaches, and he's the cross country coach. We coach together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great start. But yeah, just
Well,
if we're trying to do a good cross part, you know, getting larger groups of people, that's one way to. There's probably other ways too. You know, it doesn't have to be sports, because not
A
everyone
lot
plays
of
sports.
your Andrew Jackson Davison Club members are runners as well. So it's a good group of people, foundational group of people to start with too.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I wonder if we might want to schedule a meeting in 2 weeks rather than wait a month for our next regular meeting to talk specifically about this idea and keep it moving forward. If we wait a month, it feels hard to, you know, to treat it seriously. And that would be right after the Art of Hosting Day afternoon as well. So if we do it in 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks from today.
Yeah, one of the
Summer
things-
will be here before we know it. Indeed it will. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm inclined to put a pin in our conversation for the moment.
Mhm.
Feels like we've got lots of things percolating, and if we meet again in 2 weeks, we can move in the direction of making some choices and decisions. And we can be thinking about if there are others we want to actually invite to the meeting in 2 weeks as well. Like Jennifer Hinkle, for example.
And I really think Fitz Reed's involvement. He wants to learn and grow and do. He's motivated. He's figuring out the next step. So this might be a great piece of the puzzle for
he
him.
was very engaged in the book club conversations.
What inspired him, he wanted to start something at the high school, and that's where we ended up growing the Andrew Jackson Davison Club and expanding. So he really wants, that
Great.
book club was great for him in starting his real journey
Yeah,
here.
it's good to know.
As we think about these things, if I could interject just one idea, there's a balance between a structured lesson plan, if you will, in terms of knowing what you want to accomplish at the end of a conversation, and a willingness to let the conversation go in any direction you want. And that's the brilliance that Angie brings right now to her success in the classroom. She knows what she wants to accomplish in a given hour, but at the same time, she's created an attitude for the students to say, I can move my conversation along. I can interrupt the direction of the conversation to say what I think needs to be said at this time, and it goes off in a completely different direction. So there's a balance between a structure and an openness to whatever is on the agenda of the students that are participating in the conversation. So we don't want to overplan, is what I'm really trying to suggest.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, why don't we put a pin in this discussion for now? We've got a couple of other things we should try to do quickly before we go. Thank you so much, Angie. You're welcome to stay, but I know you have to start teaching again in a few minutes, so
Okay.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just looking at what's just come into the chat here.
Angie.
I'm trying to figure out how to leave. I am kind of tech
Oh.
challenged. I'm just going to own that. Oh, I see
Go
it.
to the
Never mind.
lower, normally you go to
Found
the
it.
lower right corner and
It's the button that's red and says leave.
you
Thank
got
you.
it.
Bye.
You got it. All right. Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. This could be something some students in our class could do too. So the other thing, well, two things on the agenda that we ought to do. One is approve the minutes. Anybody have an objection to the minutes from the last meeting? Thumbs up to the minutes on the last meeting. Okay. And the other thing is Vanessa is at least temporarily stepping down, and it wouldn't be shocking if that ends up being more permanent. You know, we've had good luck with involving people who aren't officially part of the 9 members of the, keeps feeling like a Lord of the Rings reference to me, but our fellowship, you know, you know, so we can do that, but we probably have 1 or 2 slots. You know, I think Rachel's really committed to what we're doing, but I think with her work schedule, it's become rare that she's able to join us. So anyway, Marlene and I talked about having a brief conversation about who we might want to invite to be part of this commission. And, you know, certainly part of the invitation could be to Ramey or Brandon to be more formal members of the commission if you choose to, but if you know, the wage, the salary is
thank
fairly
you,
low.
but thank you.
Yeah.
I love this group and I'll show up when I can, but I love my marriage with my wife. She says, you know, just please don't join anything else. But on that, I was gonna, because I have sit on other boards. Has this group thought about advertising to like just the public? I know you probably have people in mind, but you know, So we had great success with Brew Week when we first did that, and we were always well, we'll tap somebody and do this, and then we just decided to just push it out and had a set of questions. And I know you might be surprised. I'm sure there's people you have in mind that you've worked with that you want to bring in, but it might be a way to just add to that if you guys don't do that.
That did happen about a year ago, and I think that's, Raimi, how you came our way, isn't it? Is it not?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm comfortable in my current role. My goal here would be whatever improves the diversity of voices available to the commission in terms of moving things forward. So I can go either way. So it's up to others to make that determination. I'm not going to be upset if I'm not an official member, etc. So I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Yeah, you're okay on not getting all those
Yeah.
perks that come from
Yeah.
being an official member. Yeah.
Yeah, I need those perks for my career, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to forego them in this case.
Appreciate that. And Lacey had a great idea. What is yours? Oh, right. Okay, that great idea. And Micah's mentioning inviting students. And Marlene had someone specific in mind. You want to talk about her a little bit, Marlene?
Sure. Let me go up to see what we talked about. I think we were talking about Fer Vallejo.
Yeah.
Her name's Maria Fernanda Vallejo Grijalva. She's married to Mario Grijalva. Some folks know him, and she is she's quite invested in the community, and I don't think that she's been tapped as much as I thought she had been. And I was having some conversations with her. And I thought that she might make somebody really good for this committee, either officially or just joining us and figuring out, what her role could be. But she has a little bit more time than some of us. And she's very vested with the schools. She is also very involved with the community and still has that kind of international take. She's originally from Ecuador, but has lived here forever and a day, it feels like. And so that was my suggestion of someone to involve. I think that's important. The other person that I wanted to suggest, if I could just go ahead now, John, is Reese Carr. And we haven't talked to him or anything, but it's someone who's recently graduated from the high school, who's here at Ohio University for 4 years, right? Who we, I think, could gain a lot from listening to them and getting perspectives, and definitely intersectional perspectives and age-wise and all around. I think that Reese would be a wonderful person to invite. So I think those were my two. Did I suggest anybody else that I missed, John?
I don't think so. You mentioned that the last time we had this conversation, Marcus Parham's name had come up.
Yeah.
And it'd be great to have him, and I know his plates are rather full too. So the other person that some of us thought about was Cedric Granger, who's also a freshman at OU and living here on campus now, though he's actually from Cleveland area, I believe. Are there other people we want to reach out to? Somebody else on the top of someone's list? There was someone you had talked to a little bit. Oh, Lacey, but they ended up wanting to. It wasn't a good time for them at this point, if I remember right. I might remember wrong. You're not sure. Okay. Well, I guess I propose that we reach out to all three of those people with the idea that they could be part of this commission, and as we have space available, they could, be official members, but, we're not going to make a lot of distinctions in terms of wanting their voice, whether they're officially part of the slate or not. Micah says yes to that. Other thoughts? Raimi and Lacey, does that seem like a reasonable thing to do? I'm glad to reach out to Cedric. Marlene, do you want to reach out to both Fed and Reese? Or is there someone else who knows Reese well? You'll do both, Marlene? Well, let's do that then.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. We do need to wrap things up because it's pushing 1 o'clock. And the other thing on the agenda was updates on things, but basically everything's cooking along with the book clubs and the class and the art of hosting stuff. There's a few interesting developments around the Confederate flag thing, but nothing concrete yet, but there's been more outreach around that, including, I think it's Canton, somewhere up there, where they got it out of their fair.
Mhm.
And apparently the key element was the school system deciding that they would not support it in any way. So that's on my list to talk to Tom Gibbs about.
Very good.
Yeah, I don't know if is there anything else anybody wants to just remind people of? There's lots going on, so we're doing the 1-minute version here, but. Okay, I think our next meeting is set for the first Tuesday of May, if I'm not mistaken.
But you said we are going to try the meeting before then too, John.
And for the people who want to be part of planning
Okay.
around the youth action stuff. Does that work for people if we try to do it 2 weeks from today? I'll actually be on the road, it occurs to me. So I'd have to be on the phone, but that might work okay. Cool, well, why don't we plan on that? I'll double check with Angie and make sure it works for her. Cool, all right, well done. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Anytime.
Care, everyone.
I thought you were planning a meeting. You weren't going to be there for a second, John. Like, let's meet in 2 weeks. I'll be on the road though, so you guys enjoy.
I just occurred to me about that problem. So no,
Yeah.
I'll try to get there.
And I'm
I
happy
want to be
to
there.
come to this meeting anytime. It's hard to find time for this stuff, but I see a lot of you in other spaces, but I love what's going on here. I know someone else could fit. Not that you even asked me to be on this, but someone else could do much more, and I'm happy to just pop in when it's needed. So.
You're doing so much already, and we really appreciate you staying connected with this outreach as well. So, all right, enjoy the sunshine and the flowers, everybody. See ya.
Bye-bye.